Hi everyone, and thanks again for tuning into our 8th Bible study on the first epistle of Peter. This week we're looking at chapter 3 verses 8 to 12, where Peter turns his attention from individual groups in the congregations to the entire Christian communities at once to give them instructions. It's from here to the end of this section in chapter 4:11 that Peter accepts that even when they do good, they still may be harmed for being Christians. So they should look forward to their future vindication based on the resurrection of Jesus and symbolized in their lives by their baptism. Now, in these few verses, Peter begins by encouraging them to support one another through their trials. But then he exhorts them again to return blessing whenever they are wronged. God hates all evil, even when his own people do it. So let's begin at verse 8. Peter here is emphasizing how the Christian community should be different to the communities from which the believers come. They shouldn't face the same hostility. Rather, these Christian communities should be characterized by the 5 things he states: by unity, sympathy, brotherly love, tenderness, and humility. Now, the language of some of these is similar to what would be used of families in that time. So the message that we are now each other's family and we should treat each other accordingly. And humility is also mentioned, which was despised in Greco-Roman society. But for us, for Christians, it is a virtue. In verse 9, Peter then instructs them to bless in response to evil. Now, this verse is an important transition as Peter directly acknowledges their persecution. But in the face of this persecution, we're not to defend our honour and our reputation in retaliation, but we are to bless. We're to literally invoke God's favour on the people who harm us. We're following in Jesus' footsteps here again because we have been called by him. And blessing is what we are called to. So blessing is what we are to give. We are not to keep perpetuating the cycle of evil. Now, in verse 10 and following, we read that this is because the Lord is against even Christians who do evil. So Peter is here quoting Psalm 34, which is about King David's troubles with Abimelech when he was living with the Philistines. Peter and the Jews for a long time used this psalm because it speaks of deliverance from exile in a foreign land. But the reminder is that God has always abhorred evil, even when his own people do it. There is no free pass to behaving wickedly just because we are God's people. So the message is, when we are wronged, our choice is to continue as our old selves and repay evil for evil, or we can respond as the people of God, transformed by the cross of Jesus. Now, for us in our situation, we're not facing persecution like they were at all. For them, it was daily, sometimes brutal, and some would have lost their lives. What we might face here in Australia is totally different. But the message, our response, should be the same. Bless them in response. Don't go throwing pies in their faces, but seek their good and actively do good to them. Thanks again for tuning in to these Bible study videos, and remember that you can find the study notes on the website, and do make sure you call a friend to chat with them and pray with them. See you next week.